A waitress's perfect reply to a billionaire's insult sparks a dangerous chain of events. Drawn into a world of secrets, conspiracies, and powerful enemies, she becomes the key to uncovering a buried family mystery. As she helps the billionaire seek revenge against a dark and dangerous network, they discover the shocking truth about those they trust, and a game that will change everything. Will they survive the game, or will the powerful forces close in? The luxurious restaurant buzzed with the sound of silverware clinking and soft murmurs of the well-dressed patrons seated at their tables. The chandelier above gleamed, casting a golden glow over the polished marble floor. At a corner table, a tall, sharply dressed billionaire, Ethan Carter, sat with his back to the rest of the room, his eyes fixed on his phone. The waiter, a young woman named Lily, approached with a polite smile, balancing a tray of food. She was known for her quiet demeanor and flawless service. But as she neared Ethan's table, he suddenly looked up, his expression sharp with frustration. "What is this?" Ethan snapped, his voice echoing through the quiet restaurant. "I specifically ordered this in French. Didn't you understand me?" Lily blinked in surprise. She wasn't used to such outbursts, especially from someone of his stature. But she quickly regained her composure. "I'm sorry, sir," she said softly. "I'll check with the kitchen." Ethan's anger flared. "You should know basic French if you're working in a place like this." He barked, his tone laced with disdain. Lily stood still, her heart racing, but her face remained impassive. She knew how to handle difficult customers. But this wasn't just any customer. This was Ethan Carter, the billionaire businessman known for his ruthlessness. She turned away and walked briskly to the kitchen, trying to calm her nerves. However, as she reached the kitchen, something inside her stirred. The words that Ethan had thrown at her ignited a quiet fire, a fire she hadn't realized was burning. She quickly composed herself, gave a nod to the head chef, and returned to Ethan's table. As she approached, Ethan glanced up, his gaze hard. "Took you long enough," he muttered. Lily stood tall, her voice steady and calm. "Actually, sir, I do understand French." Ethan's eyes narrowed in disbelief. "What?" "And I also understand that I don't deserve to be spoken to that way," she replied, her voice not faltering. The tension in the air thickened, and for a moment, Ethan froze. She continued in flawless French. "I'll make sure your food is perfect, but next time I'd appreciate it if you showed more respect." Ethan's jaw dropped. The words he'd just heard were not what he had expected. A sudden silence enveloped them. For a brief second, the entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Ethan stared at Lily, his mind racing. The waitress, the woman he had assumed was nothing more than a simple server, had just spoken to him in his own language. And not only that, her response had been sharp, composed, and perfectly fluent. It was as if the tables had turned. He had insulted her, and she had delivered the perfect, calm response. The moment stretched on. Ethan couldn't believe what had just happened. He had never expected someone like her to be able to stand her ground. Lily's words lingered in the air, and Ethan's mind raced. Was she just another waitress, or was there more to her than met the eye? As Lily stood there, waiting for his response, Ethan's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of his phone buzzing once more. He glanced at the screen, his expression faltering. The name on the screen was one he had been trying to avoid. His focus shifted for just a moment, and Lily saw it. It was an opportunity, and she wasn't about to let it slip. "If you don't mind, sir, I'll get your order fixed," Lily said coolly, turning to walk away. Ethan's eyes followed her every move. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had just encountered something, or someone, unexpected. The way she had handled him, the calmness in her voice, it was different. He had been a powerful figure in business for so long, but now, standing there in front of a simple waitress, he felt something stir inside him. Was it curiosity, or was it something else? Ethan's mind kept circling back to the moment of her response, replaying it over and over again. He had been stunned into silence by her composure. Who was she? And why did it feel like there was so much more to her than just a waitress? Lily returned to the kitchen, her heart still pounding, but her face a perfect mask of professionalism. She hadn't expected to take control of the situation in the way she had. But there was something about Ethan's attitude that had stirred something inside her. She had worked in this restaurant long enough to know the types of people who came in. But Ethan, with his cold, calculating demeanor, was different. She had heard whispers about him, the billionaire businessman with a hidden agenda, the one who never seemed to back down from a challenge. Yet in that moment, she had felt a strange sense of power. Maybe it was because she knew something about him, something he didn't even realize yet. But what was it? Ethan wasn't just some random rich man in her life. There was something more to this encounter, something that neither of them could yet understand. As the evening wore on, Ethan tried to shake off the feeling that something was off. The lingering unease gnawed at him. He had dealt with many people in his life, but this woman, this waitress, had left an imprint he couldn't quite explain. Little did he know, this encounter was just the beginning of something far more complicated than either of them could anticipate. As he stood up to leave, he looked around the restaurant, his mind still consumed by the woman who had spoken to him in a language he thought only belonged to the powerful. "I'll be back," Ethan muttered to himself, his voice almost inaudible. But he didn't know that he had just set the stage for a much larger mystery, one that would unravel in ways he could never have imagined. Lily, as she cleaned the table and prepared for the end of her shift, had no idea how this moment would change her life forever. But she knew one thing for certain. Her encounter with Ethan Carter was far from over. The days following the strange encounter with Ethan Carter were filled with confusion and a sense of unease that Lily couldn't shake off. She had worked in the upscale restaurant for years, dealing with all sorts of customers, some rude, some charming, but none who had left such an impact on her as Ethan had. It wasn't just his wealth or status. There was something about him, a calm, calculating presence that made her feel like she was being observed, studied in a way she wasn't used to. It was as if he saw more in her than just a waitress. She kept telling herself that she wasn't going to let him get to her. She had a job to do, and she wasn't about to let some arrogant billionaire disrupt her life. But when she opened her email that morning, she found a message from him. "Lily, I would like to meet you tomorrow at 10 a.m. There's something I need to discuss with you. Ethan." Her heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just a passing interaction. Ethan wanted something from her. And from the tone of his message, it was clear that whatever he wanted, it was serious. She wasn't sure what to expect, but she knew that this meeting would change things. The next morning, Lily arrived at the restaurant early, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. What could Ethan possibly want from her? As she stepped inside the restaurant, she found her usual routine no longer felt the same. The familiar chatter of customers, the clinking of glasses, everything seemed distant, almost surreal. Ethan's words, his presence kept invading her thoughts. At exactly 10 a.m., as the clock ticked, Lily received a call from the restaurant's front desk. "Ms. Lily, Mr. Carter is waiting for you in the private dining room," the receptionist informed her. Lily's breath caught in her throat. She wasn't prepared for this. She had no idea what Ethan was planning, but she had a sinking feeling it wasn't going to be anything simple. As she walked down the hallway to the private dining room, her footsteps echoed in the silence. She tried to steady her nerves, but they were on edge. She had been to this room countless times, but today it felt different. When she entered, Ethan was standing by the window, looking out over the city. The light from the morning sun bathed the room in a soft glow, but it did nothing to ease the tension in the air. Ethan turned around when he heard her footsteps. "Lily, thank you for coming," he said, his voice calm, but there was something in his eyes, a sense of urgency, perhaps even desperation. "Please, sit down," she did as he asked, her heart racing. "What is this about, Mr. Carter?" Lily asked, her voice steady, though she couldn't hide the curiosity and unease in her eyes. Ethan took a seat across from her, his gaze never leaving her face. "I need your help," he said, his tone soft but intense. "There are things about my family's past that need to be uncovered. Things that I can't do on my own." Lily frowned. "What kind of things?" Ethan leaned forward, his eyes burning with a mix of determination and something else. Something that made Lily feel as though she was being pulled into a storm. "My mother was involved in a covert organization years ago, an organization that was more powerful than anyone could have imagined. And when she died, the truth about everything she had been involved in died with her." Lily's mind raced. This was not what she had expected. She had thought maybe Ethan wanted something simple, but this was something far bigger. "I don't understand," she said. "Why are you telling me this?" "What does this have to do with me?" Ethan's eyes softened for a moment, and Lily saw something vulnerable in him, something he had kept hidden behind the wall of power he had built around himself. "Because you're the only one who doesn't know me as Ethan Carter," The billionaire. You see me as I truly am, and because of that, I believe you can help me find the truth. Lily's stomach tightened. She had never thought of herself as someone who could help a man like Ethan Carter. She was just a waitress, but there was something in his words, something in the way he spoke, that made her want to help him. She didn't know why, but she did. I'm not sure what I can do, she replied, her voice unsure. Ethan reached across the table, his hand resting lightly on hers. You can help me find the answers, Lily. We need to uncover everything my mother was involved in, and the people who are still trying to cover it up. She pulled her hand back slightly, her mind whirling. This was crazy. She couldn't be involved in something like this. She had a life of her own, a job, a routine. She wasn't meant to be caught up in high-stakes conspiracies and family secrets. But as Ethan stared at her, his eyes pleading, she felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility. Maybe she wasn't just a waitress after all. Maybe she was meant to be part of something bigger. What do you need me to do? Lily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan's gaze sharpened, and he sat back in his chair. I need you to help me investigate the people my mother worked with. Find out everything you can about them, their connections, their motives. I've tried for years, but I've come up with nothing. You're the only person who can get close to them without raising suspicion. Lily took a deep breath, her mind spinning. She wasn't sure what she was agreeing to, but there was something in Ethan's request that felt too important to ignore. She had no idea what she was stepping into, but one thing was certain. Her life was about to change forever. I'll help you, she said, her voice steady, though her heart was pounding. Ethan's face softened, and for the first time she saw a hint of gratitude in his eyes. Thank you, Lily. You don't know how much this means to me. As she stood to leave, Lily's mind raced with questions. What had she just agreed to? And more importantly, what kind of danger was she about to walk into? She didn't know, but she had made her choice. There was no going back now. The following days were a whirlwind of confusion and strange anticipation for Lily. After her meeting with Ethan, she couldn't shake the feeling that her life had already started to shift in ways she couldn't quite understand. She had always lived a simple, quiet life, working as a waitress, doing her job and going home. But now she was involved in something far bigger than herself, something that could change everything. Ethan had made it clear that uncovering the secrets of his mother's past was no small task. There was a dark, powerful organization behind everything, and Lily had agreed to help him bring it to light. But as she moved through the motions of her day, the weight of what she'd committed to began to sink in. Ethan had asked her to do things she never thought she would. Investigating people, gathering information, going behind the scenes of a billionaire's world. It wasn't something she had ever imagined herself doing. But as the days went by, she found herself more and more immersed in this new reality. Ethan had given her the names of a few key people to start with. Business associates, old friends, even family members. Each one was linked to his mother's past in some way. They were all powerful, influential figures, and Ethan was convinced that they knew more than they were letting on. Lily had spent hours at her small apartment, researching, making phone calls, and piecing together a picture of the people Ethan had mentioned. But the more she dug, the more she realized that this wasn't just a simple investigation. There were hidden agendas, secret connections, and lies that stretched back decades. The deeper she went, the more dangerous it became. One afternoon, as Lily sat at her desk, sifting through old records and documents Ethan had provided her with, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen. It was Ethan. Lily, I need you to meet me tonight, he said, his voice tense. It's time to take the next step. Her heart skipped a beat. She had no idea what the next step was, but from the urgency in his tone, she knew it was something important. Where? She asked, her voice steady despite the unease creeping up her spine. I'll send you the address. Just be careful. Things are getting complicated. The line went dead before Lily could respond. Her mind raced as she grabbed her coat and headed out the door. She had learned over the past few days that when Ethan said things were getting complicated, it meant they were about to face something much bigger than they had anticipated. The address Ethan sent her led to a nondescript building on the outskirts of the city, an old warehouse surrounded by empty lots. It didn't seem like a place where billionaires went to make deals. It was dark, almost too quiet, and Lily couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She hesitated at the door for a moment before pushing it open. Inside, Ethan was waiting for her, standing by a table covered with maps and photos. His usual confidence was replaced with something darker, something that told Lily they were about to cross a line they couldn't return from. "We need to move quickly," Ethan said, his voice low. "I've uncovered something. Something that puts us both at risk." Lily felt a chill run down her spine. "What did you find?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Ethan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he motioned to the table, where a set of photos lay scattered. The first picture was of Ethan's mother, a woman with a calm expression and eyes that seemed to hold a secret. The second was of a man, older with a sharp, calculating gaze. Lily squinted at the image. "Who is this?" she asked, pointing to the man. Ethan took a deep breath before answering. "His name is Victor Kane. He's one of the people who was closest to my mother, and he's the one I believe is behind everything." Lily's mind raced. "Behind what?" "What's going on, Ethan?" Ethan's gaze turned cold, his eyes fixed on the photos. "Victor Kane is the leader of a secret network. He's been pulling strings for years, influencing powerful people, businesses, governments, anything he can control. And my mother was involved with him. She was part of his operation before she died." Lily's heart pounded in her chest. She had known there was something dangerous behind all of this, but she hadn't realized just how deep it went. "So what now?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Ethan looked at her, his expression hardening. "Now we go after him. We need to find out everything he knows. If we can get to him, we can finally uncover the truth about what happened to my mother. But we have to be careful. Victor Kane has eyes everywhere. He won't hesitate to eliminate anyone who gets too close." The weight of his words settled on Lily's shoulders. She had already crossed a line by agreeing to help Ethan, but this was something entirely different. They were no longer just uncovering family secrets. They were getting involved in something far more dangerous. Ethan turned toward her, his expression softening just slightly. "I know this is a lot to ask," he said quietly. "But I need you, Lily. You're the only one I can trust to help me finish this." Lily looked at him, her mind still reeling from everything she had learned. There was no turning back now. She had already stepped into his world, and now she had to see it through to the end. "I'm in," she said, her voice steady, though her heart was racing. Ethan gave her a small, appreciative nod. "Good. Together, we'll take him down." As they stood there in the dim light of the warehouse, Lily realized that her life would never be the same. She had become part of a dangerous game, one that would test her in ways she couldn't even imagine. But there was no turning back. Not now. The tension that had started to build in Lily's mind only grew as the days passed. She had stepped deeper into Ethan's world, one that was filled with secrets, danger, and power beyond anything she could have imagined. The quiet life she had known, working as a waitress and living a simple routine, felt like a distant memory now. Ethan's world was one where every move was calculated, where the people involved were ruthless, and where nothing was ever as it seemed. She had agreed to help him, but now she couldn't escape the growing unease that gnawed at her every moment. The investigation into Victor Kane's operation was moving faster than she had anticipated. Ethan had arranged for Lily to meet with a few of his most trusted contacts, people who were in the know about the organization and its ties to the highest levels of power. Lily had spent days going over documents, meeting with these informants, and uncovering more pieces of the puzzle. But the more she learned, the more she realized how deeply entrenched Victor Kane's influence was. He wasn't just some shadowy figure behind closed doors. He was everywhere, in politics, in business, in the media. His reach was vast, and it seemed like no one was safe. The more Lily dug, the more dangerous things became. Ethan had warned her that they were getting too close to the truth, but she hadn't fully grasped what that meant until now. She was no longer just an observer. She was actively involved in a high-stakes game, one where every move could mean the difference between success and destruction. One night, as Lily sat at her small desk, reviewing the latest batch of documents Ethan had given her, her phone buzzed. It was a text from him. "Meet me at the old warehouse. I've got something important to show you." Her heart skipped a beat. Ethan hadn't contacted her at this hour in days. The sense of urgency in his message made her feel a cold shiver run down her spine. She grabbed her coat, her mind racing with questions. What was so important? What had Ethan uncovered now? She arrived at the warehouse, the familiar coldness in the air sending a chill through her. The place was as desolate as ever. with only the faint hum of distant traffic breaking the silence. As she entered, she saw Ethan standing by the table, the same cold determination in his eyes. He looked up as she approached. "You're here," he said, his voice steady, but filled with an intensity that made her stomach twist. "What is it, Ethan?" "What's going on?" she asked, her voice low, almost a whisper. Ethan didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached for a large manila envelope lying on the table. He opened it and pulled out a series of photographs, each one more disturbing than the last. As Lily looked at the images, her heart sank. The first photo was of Victor Kane, but the second was a picture of a man she recognized. Someone from her past, someone she never thought would be linked to this world. "This is Thomas," she said, her voice barely audible. "Thomas Grayson. He's an old acquaintance from years ago." Ethan nodded grimly. "Thomas has been working with Kane. He's one of his inner circle. And now, he's involved in everything. He's the one who's been keeping tabs on us." Lily's mind was racing. She had known Thomas once, back when she was just starting out in life. He had been a friend, someone she had trusted. But now, seeing his face alongside Victor Kane's, she realized how wrong she had been about everything. "What does this mean?" Lily asked, feeling her heart pounding in her chest. Ethan looked at her, his expression hardened. "It means that we're getting too close to the truth. Kane's people are aware of us, and they're coming after us." The weight of his words hit Lily like a ton of bricks. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Ethan took a deep breath, his gaze unwavering. "We do what we've been doing all along. We keep pushing forward. We find out everything there is to know about Kane and his operation. But we need to be careful. We're no longer just investigating, we're being hunted." Lily's mind raced. The danger was real. She had crossed a line that she couldn't come back from. But there was no turning back now. They had to finish what they started. "I'm in," she said firmly, her voice steady, despite the fear that lingered in her chest. Ethan's eyes softened for a moment and he gave her a small, appreciative nod. "Good. We're in this together." As they stood there, the silence between them heavy with the weight of their choices, Lily realized that nothing would ever be the same. She had already crossed too many lines, and now she was involved in something far bigger than she had ever imagined. They were both part of a dangerous game, one where the stakes were higher than they could fathom. As she left the warehouse, the night air felt colder than ever. The weight of what was coming hung over her, and Lily couldn't help but feel like she was standing on the edge of a precipice. The next steps they took could mean everything or nothing at all. But there was one thing she was certain of. This was far from over. They had uncovered a dangerous web, and now they were both tangled in it. The days blurred together as Lily continued her dangerous work with Ethan. Each new lead they uncovered, each piece of the puzzle that fell into place, only made the situation more dire. The deeper they dug into Victor Kane's network, the more they realized how far-reaching his influence was. It wasn't just about family secrets anymore. It was about a web of corruption and manipulation that stretched across industries, governments, and more. They were up against something much bigger than they had ever anticipated, and every move they made felt like it brought them closer to the edge of disaster. Ethan had become more withdrawn over the past few days. His usual confidence had been replaced by a quiet intensity, as if he were preparing himself for something far worse than he had imagined. Lily had tried to talk to him, but every time she approached him, he seemed lost in thought, absorbed in his plans to take down Kane. They were nearing a breaking point. Ethan had arranged for them to meet with one final informant, someone who had been working undercover for years within Kane's organization. It was a risky move. They were getting too close, and they both knew it. The informant was supposed to be the key to taking Kane down for good. But as they made their way to the designated meeting spot, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The city around her felt different, darker, more oppressive. The familiar hum of life felt muted, as if it were all a facade. It was just before dusk when they arrived at the meeting location, an old abandoned building on the outskirts of the city. It was the kind of place that made Lily's skin crawl, with its broken windows and decaying walls. It didn't feel like a place for a meeting, it felt like a trap. Ethan didn't seem to notice the unease creeping up Lily's spine. His face was set, determined as he led the way inside. "Stay close," he whispered as they entered the dimly lit building. The air was thick with dust, and the sound of their footsteps echoed through the empty halls. The informant should be here soon. They moved deeper into the building, past crumbling walls and rusted metal doors. The place felt abandoned, as if it hadn't seen a soul in years. But Lily knew better. She knew this was where they'd meet, where everything would either fall into place or fall apart. "Ethan, I have a bad feeling about this," Lily said, her voice low but urgent. "This place feels wrong." Ethan didn't respond immediately. He simply continued forward, his focus unwavering. "We're close, Lily. We can't stop now. We're too close to the truth." Lily's heart raced, her instincts screaming at her to turn back. But she knew it was too late. They had already crossed the point of no return. Just then, a figure appeared in the shadows ahead. The informant. He was tall, cloaked in darkness, and his movements were smooth, deliberate. As he stepped into the dim light, Lily caught a glimpse of his face, a man she didn't recognize. "Ethan Carter," the man said, his voice cold. "You're finally here. You're the informant?" Ethan asked, his voice guarded. "What do you know?" The informant stepped forward, handing Ethan a small envelope. "Everything you need to know is in here. But be warned, Carter. There's no going back once you open it. Cain is more powerful than you think." Ethan took the envelope without hesitation and opened it, his eyes scanning the contents quickly. His face remained impassive, but Lily saw the flicker of something in his gaze. Shock, disbelief, fear. The informant didn't wait for Ethan to speak. He turned to Lily, his eyes locking onto hers. "You've been digging too deep, both of you," he said, his tone low and ominous. "Cain won't let you get away with this. He knows what you've uncovered." Lily felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. The informant stepped back into the shadows. "I'm sorry, but I can't help you anymore. Cain's people are already on their way. You have to leave, now." Before either of them could react, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway. They weren't alone. Ethan's expression hardened. "Run," he said urgently, grabbing Lily's arm and pulling her toward the exit. They sprinted through the dark, decaying building, the sound of footsteps growing louder behind them. The door they had entered through was now blocked, and they were trapped. "This way!" Ethan shouted, veering off toward another exit. They were almost there when the lights suddenly flickered, and a figure appeared in front of them. Victor Cain. His face was calm, too calm, as he stood there, his presence filling the space with a cold, suffocating energy. "You think you can expose me?" Cain's voice was smooth, almost soothing, but there was an underlying menace to it. "You think you can just dig into my past and walk away unscathed?" Ethan stood tall, his jaw clenched. "It's over, Cain. We know what you're doing. We know what you've been hiding." Cain's smile widened. "You think you've won? You've only just begun to understand the game, and now I'm afraid it's too late for both of you." Lily's heart raced as she realized the truth. They had uncovered the darkest secret, and now they were standing face to face with the mastermind. There was no more running. The truth was out, but so was the danger. They had crossed a line, and now they would have to face the consequences.